Hello, everyone. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to another edition of Zooming In on the Halal Metropolis, where we're doing a series of quick interviews with people in our community, leaders, artists, activists, chefs, bakers, across the spectrum to check in on them and see how they're doing and managing amidst the corona crisis and the statewide shutdown. So with me today, I have Amanda Saab, a local baker, activist, and just to get things going, we wanted to just check in on you and see how you're doing, how your family's doing.
Thank you. Thanks so much for doing this. It's a welcomed outlet in a way to talk about this with our community and share it a different platform. And I quite love the name and the play on words. So kudos for that. I'm doing well. We're in week 3 now. So I've had some time to adjust and figure out a new routine. Learn that when I do have Zoom conference calls, I have to send my family on a walk or else they'll be on top of me and piling in. So lessons have been learned in these 3 weeks.
And how have the adjustments been at home with you and your family?
So figuring out our work from home space, we had to build a standing desk, so that was new. We never needed that at home before. And then Hannah is 2.5, so she was in a school daycare setting, and she wants a lot of attention because she's 2.5. So trying to figure out how we can incorporate that while still maintaining our role and our commitments and our day jobs has been a challenge. But it's figuring out lots of activities at night for what we're going to do the next day has definitely kept me sane, and just making bins of different activities. Okay, here's the Play-Doh, here's the block bin, and as soon as she's bored, we'll switch them out and do something else.
So speaking of, you have a bakery, you have a business. How has that been affected?
So I've actually closed the business before all of this happened, which I think, I don't know, divine. I've always trusted that God leads me to where I need to be at the right time. And that's kind of the path I take. And who would have guessed something like this would have happened, and I would have been able to close and kind of get out of my bakery before all of this. But I do know several of my small business owner friends have been severely impacted by this. And while there are lots of funding and grant loan opportunities, well, here they come. The numbers just don't add up to the deficit and revenue lost. So I was recently reading, just in Southeast Michigan, almost $500 million, $500 million has been lost in revenue in the month of March. And all of these grant programs don't equal that. So we know this is going to be devastating, especially on food-based businesses where the margins are already so small.
So you're such a big part of the food community in the area, and you have lots of friends and supporters in the area. When you talk to your colleagues and other fellow, business owners, bakers, and chefs, what are you hearing?
Just trying to get creative and find ways for them to get through it. They're we don't want to go down in this way. We don't want something so out of our control to be the reason we can't fulfill our dream and continue to provide for our families. So it's getting innovative, starting to sell online. I think e-commerce is, for all brick and mortar businesses, is the way to go. And to ensure that you can have longevity, because we don't truly know how long this is going to last and what the implications of this is going to be. So curbside delivery and thinking about different ways that you can innovate. And while there are a lot of platforms for deliveries, there's been so many reports before all of this about how exploitative some of them can be on small business owners with their fees and all of that. So I think now is a time to maybe partner with your neighbor who might be an Uber or Lyft driver out of work, and that way they know how to deliver things, they know how to do routes and all of that, and get creative and innovative in this way.
The next thing on my mind is something that's on a lot of our minds in the next coming weeks. Ramadan is starting up, and what is Ramadan going to look like for you and your family this year?
So my husband husband Hassan and I actually, we lived in Seattle for 5 years, apart from our family, apart from a big community. So I guess that trained us for a really small, intimate, like iftar. But it's going to be sad because, you know, one of the reasons we moved back is to be part of community and to have like these large gatherings, to be with our family. So, you know, in some ways it's a blessing. It gives you more time. You don't have to be focusing on food so much, even though, you know, that's what I love. But really getting that spiritual connection, more time for devotion and prayer, I think. And inshallah, I make it to this Ramadan because last Ramadan, it was so great. We were in the Ramadan food festival, but running a bakery during the day and then doing that festival. Sadly, I missed that like spiritual connection during Ramadan. And I said, inshallah, if I get to fast another Ramadan, like my goal is to finish the Quran, do all the things that I normally would that I missed out on. So I think like perspective is we shouldn't take advantage when we do have the opportunity to gather, because I definitely did that. You know, never thought twice about like going to my mom's house for dinner on Sunday. And now I can't wait, and it's going to be like a totally new experience, I guess, in a way that I'd just be so grateful to have that connection again with our families.
Yeah, the Sahur Festival is something that I think a lot of people are feeling as a bit of a loss this year, not just, of course, for the food, but for the community spirit of just having something like that. And I know this year, you know, Sally, my colleague on this project, spoke to Hassan Shami a couple days ago, and we posted that video as well on Facebook and Instagram. So you guys saw, you know, basically how, you know, devastating and how much of a loss that feels like, you know, it's going to be. And there's lots of things like that, I think, that are going to be very different. And I think it's a good point that you made, and other people that we've spoken to. I spoke to Fred earlier today as well, Fred Serini, and he was talking about how, you know, how busy he gets, you know, during Ramadan. And some of the other people we've spoken to talk about that too. And I myself, I'm really not able to have a lot of time alone because I'm running from mosque to mosque, from project to project, from meeting to meeting. And, you know, in many ways, things really speed up during Ramadan. And so this year it's going to be quite different. I really won't be going anywhere. And I think that's the case for a lot of us, is that we'll be spending a lot of time alone. And I wonder, you know, that community spirit, which is such an important thing, you know, what are your thoughts on, you know, how do we capture that communal aspect of it without actually being around each other?
I think it's going to be a lot of this. So one tradition that my family has continued to upheld despite coronavirus is we usually do Saturday dinners at my tata's house. So it's my mom and all her siblings, all of their kids. So it's like, you know, 50 plus people. So we've started Zoom conferencing at 5 p.m. on Saturdays so we can, you know, and it's like chaotic and loud and nobody can hear what anyone's saying. And that's exactly what it's like when we're in person. Yeah. So while, you know, the physical connection isn't there, we still have these emotions, these conversations, and we're still able to connect in that way. And I think it's going to be really important to continue to do things like this during the month of Ramadan. And I think people get really creative during this time, whether it's like neighbors leaving things on each other's porches, and finding ways to brighten someone else's day. We've seen lots of like sidewalk chalk. I think the decorations for Ramadan this year are going to be amazing because people have so much more time, and what a way to spread cheer and just that holiday spirit in a way that doesn't mean we have to be in close proximity to one another.
Yeah, I think, you know, the other thing about Ramadan that I think is particularly unique to the community here in Southeast Michigan is the way that people who aren't Muslim get to experience and participate in Ramadan. And I feel like every year there's more and more of that as our community continues to grow and provide resources and opportunities for people who are not from the community to engage in iftars and community events during Ramadan. And so I think that's going to be another loss this year. That's something that's particularly unique to the area, Dearborn, Detroit, Southeast Michigan. And so we're really going to feel that as a bit of a loss too, as being able to share Ramadan with everybody else as well. So yeah, and so
definitely.
Yeah.
And I've done several dinner with your Muslim neighbors just to invite people in. And we've always done them during Shahr Ramadan because it's such a special time to share a meal. So I've been, you know, kind of grappling with that loss too, like, oh, we won't be able to share with our non-Muslim neighbors, you know, what it's like to experience an iftar and a day of fasting. So we'll have to think of some new ways to build those community connections online or with sidewalk chalk or whatever it is that we decide. But I think there's always a way. And, you know, as humans, we're very social and we like to be around each other. So I think we can get creative and still find a way to have that connectedness. Inshallah.
Well, whatever ideas you come up with, please share them with us. We'd love to help spread the word if you end up doing something like that, you know, because we always follow the great work that you do, and we'd love to promote it as well. And thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. We're doing a series of these check-ins and just, you know, trying to get a pulse of how people are holding up in the community. You know, we'd love to do a longer interview with you as well when we get our podcast going, which is going to be coming up pretty soon. But thanks again for all your time. Really appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your day. And
thank you. You too. It's sunny, so we're going to be outside.
Exactly.